Hey, I'm Jason, and I work with our young people here at Fairview. Thanks for joining us today for what is simply a reminder of how sufficient our God's grace is for today. For every day and for any moment that you find yourself in, our God's grace is there for you. Isn't it encouraging to daily come back to how graciously our God has supplied us with His strength? Let's read a few verses that simply remind us of this foundational truth in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 3 times I plead with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Paul is opening up his life here and sharing a personal struggle. You can tell that he knows his life would be better without it. And I think a lot of us can relate to some struggles in our own life that we just want to get rid of, that we would love to just not have there. The thorn in the side reference is pretty revealing. He references that a few verses above this passage. It's such a great picture of something that you can't shake, something that is always there with a stabbing reminder. There are 2 main thoughts here. One, a reoccurring struggle is happening, but also the life-altering resolution that there is actually security within the struggle. Are we secure in our weaknesses? I just recently had the opportunity to do some manual labor. I got to dig up some camellia bushes. For those of you that know what those are, they're not the easiest things to uproot. And so the trick for me was to create a perimeter around the bush and expose the weakest roots. Once the weakest roots were gone, I was then able to focus on the 1 or 2 strongholds in that root system. At that point, it was easy. After exposing the weakest points, it wasn't long before I completely uprooted the entire bush. Aren't we glad that we don't have to fear that the weakest areas in our life will actually one day take us away from God, or actually remove us from the position where our God has placed us as His chosen children? How do we actually find security in some of the most insecure areas in our life? Well, just as Paul has showed us, we simply look to Christ and see how He has given Himself to us. Paul actually is teaching the Corinthians through a life experience. And this is actually the best way, one of the best ways you can teach somebody a lesson, is through something that you are actually going through yourself. And he actually comes to this resolution that he shouldn't just try to escape all these things that he struggles with, especially this one, but there's actually security and strength and grace within the struggle to ride through the struggle. How well we walk in weakness displays how much we trust our God. Paul is reminded that God says, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Walking in weakness as we trust God is not the easiest thing. But just as Paul shows us, our weaknesses are a perfect way our God is made known to us, perfect way that God teaches us, but also a way that God is made known to others. If we truly believe this truth, it actually means that the weakest areas in our life become platforms of stability. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For when I am weak, then I am strong. If you're like me, you have so many more weaknesses in your life than anything else. It is because of this that I can rest in this passage, that I find hope from what Paul has found to be true in God. For weakness simply means more opportunity for my life to be about where my strength comes from, rather than my strength itself, rather than just me. My life can be about who gives me the strength. My weaknesses can perfectly make God known to me and to those around me. And that is by design. Our God's grace continually shapes us as we grow. Thank you for being a part of today's reminder of God's grace.